All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Leaders in Communication speaker series. I'm Hub Brown, and I'm here with a great conversation that we're going to have this evening with Ramon Escobar from CNN. I'm Associate Dean at the Newhouse School. I'm happy to welcome you to this conversation, and I want to encourage all of you to take a look. You probably have all kinds of different questions out there. Please put those questions in the Q&A. We'll get to those. I, of course, have an awful lot of questions for Ramon Escobar, and I believe that you may as well. So we're going to have a great and rousing, I think, conversation here. And I want to, first of all, thank Ramon for joining us tonight. It is a real privilege and a real pleasure to have you with us, with all the folks who are going to be having great questions for you. Let me go ahead and do a quick introduction for those of you who are maybe not as familiar with Ramon's career. He is the Senior Vice Recruitment and Development for CNN Worldwide. He's responsible for the recruitment of all on and off air talent for CNN US, CNN International, CNN en Espanol, and HLN. He also advances the internal development of all anchors, correspondents, contributors, and producers. Ramon is based out of New York City, and he has held the position of Vice President of Talent Recruitment and Development since 2012. So, don't be embarrassed, Ramon. I'm going to be listing all these accolades that you've had, because you've had a lot of great things going on. He has served as Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion for CNN Worldwide from January 2017 to June 2019, and continues to play a vital role in diversity and inclusion efforts for Warner Media News and Sports, which is the parent company of CNN. He came to CNN after several years spent at Telemundo, most recently as Executive Vice President of Network News, overseeing the entire news division and including all international news bureaus and the development of on-air talent. He also, before that, was in a management position at MSNBC, in charge of all live news programming there, and served as Vice President and News Director of NBC's owned and operated station in Miami, WTVJ, and got his start in television as a producer at Univision's owned and operated station in New York, WXTV. In addition to that, Ramon Escobar has served as a mentor, teaching several classes as a visiting faculty member at the Poynter Institute for Media Studies, and he is a lifetime member of the National Association of Hispanic Journalists. And with that, sir, Ramon, welcome once again to our conversation.
Hub, you made me sound like I'm 80 years old, but I'm 27. Well, first thing I want to say, Hub, is congratulations to you as the new dean of the University of Florida. I hope the Syracuse people don't get mad at me, but you'll be the first orange Gator I've ever seen. But congratulations.
Well, thank you very, very much.
Look forward to working with you.
It's been an honor to be a part of the Newhouse School for nearly 25 years now, and I'll always have an orange with me. So it's going to be.
Well, I mean, if you're going to have Gators around, you're going to want to see one. The orange one is the one you want it because it'll stand out. You'll know when it's coming. So
absolutely, you definitely will know when it's coming. So. Of course.
So tonight, Hub, just so people know, I'm not trying to be casual for Syracuse. Like, I don't care. I wanted to wear my most important sweatshirt.
Absolutely.
Is a sweatshirt which I wear, which is about from CNN's 40th anniversary. The world needs journalists, and so I just wanted to kind of make sure everyone understood I wasn't trying to be disrespectful and being casual. I just wanted to send a message to the world.
Absolutely. And that's a great message to be sending right now, because it really does focus on what I'm going to want to talk with you about. And the first issue, of course, is going to be the year that we've had and the challenges for journalists that we've gone through. We have been through somewhat of a trial by fire in journalism over the past year, not just obviously journalism, but of course, a lot of other things as well. We've had a real reckoning around racial justice in the country, and we have been trying to do what we can to live through a pandemic. And in all of that, journalism has been tested. Are we stronger now as a profession than we were at the beginning of, say, 2020?
Oh, I think no doubt. We're no doubt stronger. But I think there's a larger issue. And that is that this moment of reckoning, and what I want to talk about is that it's as if someone lifted a rug. This stuff has been underneath there all the time. It just didn't emerge. It just didn't come about. It's been there. We just haven't been paying attention in some cases, or others just haven't been willing to look under it. But it doesn't mean it wasn't there. And by the way, it also doesn't mean that it'll go away. Either we have to deal with it, or we put the cover back on it. But it's not going away, and it's not a moment. This is the world we live in. And I think what's happened with journalists now is, if you haven't realized how important and essential we are as journalists now, then you're not paying attention. You know, when I went to J school early on in life, you know, we got to study, as I'm sure your students do. You know, you study the sort of classic beginnings of TV news, and you know, you study Edward R. Murrow, and you study the Murrow Boys and CBS News, and you know, the Red Channel and the Blue Channel. You learn all those things, and William Paley, and you know, those were very, very salient times. And I think the TV news took off because of the context of the times in which it lived. It was able to serve as this perfect lens and current reasoned reflection of what was going on. And so you were in a post-World War II situation. You were going into a massive reckoning around civil rights. And I will tell you, I was obviously not alive during that time, but my parents were. And when I think about those periods and those times, and those people that we read about, I think about all of us today and all your students, because they're living that now. It's obviously, it's not apples to apples. There's some very difficult situations, and Jim Crow was Jim Crow, and it was a horrible, horrible situation. But if you think about what we're in today and how we're having to deal with all these multiple issues coming at us, a global pandemic that's killed 500,000 people in this country, and how the country has been forced yet again to deal with its original sin. I've never seen a moment in my lifetime, and I lived through 9/11. I was running news coverage for MSNBC when 9/11 happened. I thought that was going to be it. I'm like, oh, I'll never get a story like this. No. And what I think life teaches us, and what I hope all the students listening, and I know that many of the graduates already know, is you have to be prepared and ready to be the leader to help us solve these problems. These are all problems waiting to be solved. And your students and this school is part of the solution. And that's the way you need to view yourself. Is you're going to get a great education. We have so many graduates from Syracuse at CNN. Last count, I just did a quick back of the envelope with my friend Bob Hand, and there was 15, 16 graduates I can count right off the back of our hand. Mm-hmm. You guys are going to be the solution to this and help us deal with this. But we are stronger as a institution than we've ever been, but we have work to do. And I hope the students there are going to be part of that.
I also want to press you a little bit on the fact that, yes, we are strong as journalists, but I think it's fair to say that journalism in the United States has not been threatened quite as much as we've seen the last few years. And and it's not just, I mean, we're real talk here. The change in administrations maybe makes some people feel like maybe some of that pressure's off, but is it really? And are we at a place where we have to actually go to the public now and do a whole lot more work in terms of selling the need for journalism as we haven't had before?
I think it's an important question. Mm-hmm. And here's how I would look at this. In the last 4 years, given the administration and the philosophy and tactic that administration took towards the media, I think what it did was it shone a light on how essential having a free press is. Not that we didn't know it, but now we really understand it. And I think that what happened was, in a good way, that the citizenry of this country turned to us to try to figure out and the confusion, to try to figure out the truth, to try to figure out where they can go amidst so much polarization and hate. It's not pretty, it's ugly. And if you're a journalist seeking to get into this field looking for popularity, I'm talking to you TV people. um, I'm a TV guy, so I can say that. But it's not all this adulation of being an anchor and all that. Most of it is incredibly hard work, and you're completely not valued by most people outside of your profession. Um, journalism has always ranked, journalists have always ranked on the low scale of any poll, you know, right there next to lawyers and Congress. Not your congressman. People love their local congressman, but they hate Congress. And I think people love their local anchor, but they hate journalists. There's not a lot we can do on some of that, but here's what we can do. CNN in particular became a target during this time period. And I think that most of the time we really focused on how to get that right. We weren't perfect, but our goal was to simply say truth and facts matter. And that's what guided us. And I think that's not something new. I think that's what you should be learning in school now, and it should guide you the rest of your career as a journalist. But it's how you pursue those facts. And this is really important. The world, right, that your journalists are walking into is so polarized right now, right? You guys live in certain parts of New York that are different from New York City. You know, Mark Lodato, your dean, and I, we were students together at University of Missouri in Columbia, Missouri. It's very different from where I live in New York or where I'm right now in Miami, being close to my parents. These are all different places. And I think what we have to do as journalists is we have to hold people accountable and be tough. But Hub, we need to know how to do that. I always ask students all the time, what does holding someone accountable look like? It doesn't need to be nasty. It doesn't need to be, you know, we use this analogy about football, right? You remember in the old days on football, they'd celebrate. You don't need to spike the ball. You don't need to have so much drama. Sometimes a simple question. So I think that's the thing that we got to get right and do better at. Trump brought out a lot of negativity in journalists. And I think we need to be bigger and better than that, because Trump was one president. Joe Biden is the next. Listen, I want to remind people, Barack Obama had issues of transparency. People may love Barack Obama. He may have been all about hope. He may have been a wonderful orator, but his administration was pretty tough on trying to keep the press out. Mm-hmm. So being from Latin America and my parents from Latin America, we all know what happens. Those of you who lived in totalitarian states or know of them, the first thing that any totalitarian state does is they take control of two institutions, the military and the media. And that's what you need. And so I think we've learned over the last 4 years that this is the closest we've had in recent times to an attempt to create us as the enemy of the people. Mm-hmm. And the reason that was so successful is because we, by nature, have a relationship with those we hold accountable that's going to be tough. There's going to be that sort of relationship. For some people, that looks like we're taking a side. And I don't think we are combatants in this war. We are the ones who have to chronicle it. And the more your students understand that nuance and really grasp it, I think the better they'll be served trying to navigate through these incredible times. But it's a great time to be a journalist. If you're a football player, it's like being in the Super Bowl, right? Or if you're a musician, this is like playing at Carnegie Hall. This is a great time to be a journalist, and you should be excited about entering the workforce because the challenges are great, and we need you.
Yeah, I would chime in on that, especially because these are those times when we need journalists. And but I want to press you on one point there, and that is that yes, we have gone through this era where there is so much challenge to journalists, but there's also challenges that networks have often brought upon themselves in the battle for eyeballs. And so you're in that battle for ratings, there's a whole lot that went on that continues to go on that basically privileges conflict over analysis. And so, Les Moonves famously said at CNN that Donald Trump was not good for America, but he was good for CBS. And I think that I wonder if that's a reckoning that we have to actually have a much bigger debate upon right now is how far do you take the conflict that sort of gets put at the top of so many news stories. He said, she said, we're done, and not because I mean, would you agree? Some of the things that have happened with us have been kind of our own doing.
Yeah, I mean, I would look at this a couple of ways. I can only speak for CNN in the 9 years, almost 10 years that I've been here, and what we have attempted to do. And I think what's happened is that we live in a very sophisticated, not even bifurcated, I mean disaggregated world of the way everyone who's on this Zoom right now thinks about the way they interact with information and news and media. And I think where we were 10 years ago, or when we were back in the day when Mark Lodato and I were in college together, and I'll remind you, he's a little older than me, the choices now that everyone have, you now are basically having to figure out how do you become essential to people who want news? That's our goal. We want to be essential. And I think a lot of times people are over-index, Hub, on what they see on the CNN United States channel. Mm-hmm. And the CNN United States domestic channel, which is number one now, and yes, we've had an incredible run in the last year. It's the highest rating we've ever had in history. But I think a lot of that was driven by the historic nature and the milestones of news that we had to cover. And that has been our focus. We have spent a lot. We started doing town hall meetings before anyone did town hall meetings. We started doing the COVID town hall meetings. We've done 60 of them. Those in the past, Hub, I remember when I was in cable news, people would say, oh my God, that's a ratings killer. Oh my, what are you doing? We have not worried about any of that. We've done Sesame Street specials on kids and how to do kids and COVID. I remember back in the day, people would say, oh my gosh, what are you guys doing? Those are ratings killers. So I think the world has changed dramatically. So now you have to have a much more parallel process approach. We have the CNN US channel, and yes, there are debates and things, but what we're able to do with CNN Digital far outweighs what we're doing on the air. Now, the prestige of the air is still big, and the money it makes still generates about 70% of the profit, but that's changing. What we are now doing with digital, and what's important to your students to know, is the landscape, how it's completely shifted and transformed underneath us, and it's doing it every day, is, we're about to embark on CNN direct to consumer, right? It's going to be whatever CNN's version of Netflix is for news. That's what we're doing now. We're working on it. It's going to change the game. And there's going to be so many jobs and so many, but that's the way we look at reaching everybody, Hub. I think, yes, there's a place where when you look at MSNBC and Fox News and CNN, that's one little area of competition, and there's sometimes food fights in there and this and that. But I think the news landscape and the way you got to look at this is far broader. Once you add in the CNN direct to consumer, CNN digital, what we do with our apps, how we reach people, that's where you're going to see, we've just spent a lot of time. We just hired a new race and equity team. We built that out. Why? Because race and equity is not a story that you do just when it happens. It's a beat. It happens every day. You explore it, you go deep. We built that team purposefully. We're about to embark on building a climate crisis team, right? Why? Because you have to do that story every day. We've also moved to hiring a lot more people from print and digital rather than television, and bringing them in, and because they're the ones who are enterprising and breaking stories. So I think we've evolved. Obviously, I'm inside and I'm biased towards what we're doing. And I do think that the news cycle has been very helpful. More people have watched CNN than have ever watched in its 40-year history. Think about that. In an environment where cable is going down, in an environment where major broadcast is still going down, everything's on the backslide, but yet CNN has its highest rating in the history of its existence. What does that tell you? It tells you that there is a group of people, there are citizens in the country and in the world who have been reactivated and understand how important it is to stay connected to the world. And so I think that just bodes well for anyone wanting to be a journalist.
That's a great thought. And I think also, and if you would comment a little bit on this, we've had this conversation around truth and around sort of showing our work, basically. Has it led to more conversations about how we basically show our process to the audience, how we arrive at conclusions, how we deal with sources, those sorts of things?
Yes, I mean, what the last year has done with the pandemics, the double pandemics as I call them, but the last 4, I think what it's all done and led to is people are searching for news organizations that are going to give them what they need, which is analysis, truth, and context and relevance. And here's what's important about that. We've probably never had more media outlets than ever, right? Even on the right now, we see not just Fox News, right? But we see One America Network, we see Newsmax, we see all these different websites. So every area of the polarization across the timeline, across the span is emerging. Now, if you do your history, you know that when this republic started, that, you know, the barons of this country, the people with money, had newspapers, and the newspapers all had different opinions about their views of the war, or their views of whether they were Republicans, or whether they had the view of states' rights versus centralizing government. We've always had political spectrum across the journalism agenda. It's just most of it was in newspaper form, and you had the opinion page, and you had columnists. That version just became Fox News and MS and all that. Now I think we're moving into a hyperdrive of so many different things out there. The reason I say that, Hub, to your question, is that's why CNN and others who truly go after saying this is what's true amidst all this noise, this is what's accurate, here's the context, those places become more valuable. So I think the reason CNN's ratings are number one is because CNN, amidst this chaos, appears to the viewer and the reader to be of much more value in this craziness that they're trying. So I think in local news, in local newspapers and local TV stations, if you can be that place that clears the stuff up for people, that is the voice of reason, that gives them the right context, you actually can increase your value to them. And I think that's what's happening. And so Facebook, all the technology we confront, right? I'm actually a professor at FIU in Miami, and one of the classes I teach is diversity and inclusion and principles of journalism, a bunch of different classes. One of the things I teach is this idea that as journalists, we have to understand that there is a fundamental truth that never changed. And that is we are constantly seeking the current reasoned reflection of society's events, values, and needs. Technology comes in, and you have Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, all this stuff, Instagram, all this stuff going on. And I asked my students the question: is TikTok or is Facebook or is it journalism? And the answer is, in my opinion, no. But journalism can be practiced on it. But there's no one at Facebook. I mean, they try to make the case, but it's not Facebook's job to verify that story, to go check the sources, to ask them, wait a minute, is this in context? They're not a journalism institution. But yet the audience in the world has been somewhat confused because that's where they get their source of stuff. So in that world that I'm talking about, Instagram, TikTok, we, CNN and others like us, and hopefully your students, we become much more valuable because amidst this craziness of zombies, somebody needs to hold a flashlight, and everyone's running towards that person. So I think we've never been, that's the whole point of, I just think we've never been more valuable, and your students are pursuing a profession that, in my opinion, has never been more valuable in our modern time.
Absolutely. And I'm going to give you a chance to talk to students about the kinds of things that you think they should be thinking about as they go into the profession. One of the things I want to ask you before we jump into that, and also there will be questions I see. I'm going to encourage folks again to, if you have questions, go ahead and write those questions into the Q&A.
You've been pressing me. I love the way you're pressing me. I do want to talk before we get out. When you get a chance, I do want to have one little conversation about diversity and issues of race and ethnicity and all that. But when you have a second.
Oh, don't worry, we're coming to that. But absolutely. One of the things I wanted to ask you though is, as we talk about what's needed of those emerging journalists. You're at FIU, you see what's happening in the university environment as well as in the professional environment. What does CNN, what do journalists and journalism organizations need from those institutions of mass communications and journalism in the country who are preparing these people to join you?
It's my favorite question. It's my favorite question. And if you're going to get one thing out of this today, then it'll be the answer to this question. We must need from you critical thinking individuals, people who are culturally literate, have critical thinking skills, have the ability to have a voracious appetite and consumption for information and news, and can take all that and have original ideas. That's what we are desperate for. That is the drink of water in the desert. That is my kingdom for a horse. I'll keep going with these metaphors. That's what we do. And that, my friends, is not something that is new. Forget technology, forget iPhones, forget live views, forget anything around what's going on with all of this digital technology. All of that can go away, and all we have left, and why you're so valuable, because honestly, there's a bunch of people in California, in Silicon Valley, basically trying to replace journalists by creating these computers that can create algorithms. Okay, that's how unessential they view us. Mm-hmm. They think they can create some sort of AI over there that can do our job. And the reason why that's crazy and repugnant is because at the end of the day, it's people from all different walks of life who come in and do this incredible job of thought leadership, of setting the agenda, of telling America or the world or Syracuse or wherever you're going to be working, this is what's important today. This is what you need to know today. This is what you must know today. It's not always what you want to know, it's what you need to know. Having that kind of awesome responsibility, that takes somebody who's coming into this in a serious and passionate way, that truly cares. Every interview I do, no matter what job it's for, and trust me, I do thousands of interviews with all the people we hire, whether it's anchors or correspondents or executive producers, or even I interview APs and PAs, I interview interns, okay? Because tomorrow's intern is next week's CEO, because now interns can become head of the company like in 6 years. So I always treat them well. That's the first, second, and third thing I look at for Hub. Can I have a conversation with you about what's happening? What do you think about this Tiger Woods thing? What's that mean? Hey, let's talk about, what happened with Trump. Let's talk about what's going on in Japan. Should they have the Olympics or shouldn't they? Hey, what do you think about the Chinese and their influence in the region and the fact that they want to invade Taiwan? Wow, what would that mean if they did that? Hey, what do you think about the Proud Boys? What's that mean? Hey, you're from upstate New York. What do they think about Cuomo these days? Like them, hate them? What's going on? I want to be able to have that conversation with your students. And if they can't have that conversation with me, that's how I filter. It's not about, oh man, I can do a great stand-up. Oh man, no, that comes, yes, that's great. But the journalism is first, second, and third, because it means that you're going to have the ability to figure out what a great story is. Think about all the stories we did on Trump. Okay. You have to start thinking about what's the right framing of that story. What's the core sense? Can you identify what a great story is? Do you have those instincts? So that's the answer. And it continues to be the answer. It's been what I've been working on all my career. And every day, I've done 6 interviews today, and every one of those interviews involved this issue of me going after that and figuring that first part out. Then we can figure out the rest. Mm-hmm. Writing, obviously, expressing yourself orally, expressing yourself on the written page, knowing how to write. Yes, essential. But none of that matters if you don't have great judgment as a journalist and can have your own ideas and be a critical thinker.
Absolutely. We did, and I do want to get to talking about some of the issues around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I want to start a little bit by talking about the kind of quote unquote national moment that we've had around racial justice, around the issues from Ahmaud Arbery. That killing actually was just a year ago, just now, and George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, the whole all of these horrendous and heartbreaking issues, and so it gives us this moment that people like to talk about. Yeah. My question is that moment over?
No, I don't think that moment's over. I think that if you look at every major television organization, every single television organization that has a news organization has had upheaval and transformation and has had a change at the top. And every major media company has had a change at the top. NBC has had a change at the top, including in the news division. Warner Media has had a change at the top and will soon at our place as well. CBS has had a change at the top. Fox News has had quite a loud change at the top involving a lot of issues. Every single one. That is not by accident. There is massive transformation going on and it's non-stop. So this can't be over. This is part of what is causing that change. You know, I look at these things as waves in the ocean and suddenly they're hitting land, but those waves have been around. They've been coming. So I don't think it's going away. There's going to be a lot of pain and discomfort. And as journalists, we have to understand how important we are in helping people navigate that, but we shouldn't run from it. And that's where I want to get into this issue of how important diversity and inclusion is. And I want to take a little bit of a different approach. Diversity and inclusion isn't about me, people like me, or you, a Black man and a Latino man. It's not about us. And if you think that that's what diversity means, then you have a very narrow view of diversity. Diversity is very much, in my opinion, like accuracy. I would never go into a journalism class or a newsroom here at CNN and say to the group of journalists, hey guys, before we get started today, I just wanted to encourage everyone, let's do our best to be accurate. All right, give it a good old try. You know, I know we won't be perfect, but do your best to be accurate, okay? We would never say that, okay? It is our job to be accurate. And when we're inaccurate and make a mistake and we're wrong, it should be a big deal, huge deal, right? If you were to just simply take that analogy and give it to a surgeon, I think we'd all understand, right? Hey, when you get in there and open up my dad, can you make sure that, can you try your best not to kill him or cut something wrong? Yeah, I'm gonna try, right? Or, you know, air traffic control. Hey, do you think maybe we could land that plane? Give it your best shot. When you put it in those terms, I think you understand, same thing for journalists. We can hurt people. We can destroy their lives. Giving people bad information, that can lead to polarization. So I think you have to be very, very serious about understanding your responsibility and your role. So here's what I would say about diversity. Diversity is like accuracy in that it's essential. It's not extra. It's not that shit that someone made me take a class about and, oh, here we go, the HR people are calling me. You need to get that out of your head as a journalist. Because if you are not understanding what diversity means to being a reporter, then you are actually not being accurate. You are not pursuing journalism in a holistic way. You are not properly reflecting society. And that is journalistic malpractice. It has nothing to do with morality or doing the right thing or making sure that the NAACP or LULAC isn't knocking at your door. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with journalistic reasons. And here's what I would say to you quickly. You have to understand, I'm sure there's people on here who have been to a wonderful location around the world, right? They've traveled to an exotic hub. Tell me an exotic place that you've traveled to in your life.
Well, I'm married to an Australian, so I've been all over Australia. So I guess I could say that.
Okay. So before you married an Australian, did you know anything about Australia?
Almost nothing.
Almost nothing, right. And so, by the way, getting in a plane from the United States to Australia, it's not only a long trip, it costs a pretty penny.
It does.
And people do it all the time. People will get on a plane who don't speak Japanese, don't know anything about Japanese culture, and they will spend thousands of dollars to fly to Japan. And here's my point. Why do they do that? Why do you do that? Why do you go to a faraway land that you know nothing about and want to spend thousands of dollars to go experience it? Hub, what would be your answer if I asked you that question?
Well, you know, it's a great question, and as Mark will tell you, I'm also part of my portfolio is international initiatives now. And so I've been to a number of other countries, and I always approach it now as a real opportunity to learn something about the people who are there.
Yeah, right. So here's what I need you all to do. We have within us the ability to understand diversity in such a rich way, but then when we get to work, we don't. And what I'm saying is the reason people pay all this money to go to faraway places where they don't even speak the language and don't even understand the custom is because they are opening their mind at that moment to new experiences and love it. But yet when they come to work and you close down and now you're not wanting to have new experiences. Instead, you're seeking similarity. You go into the cafeteria and you spend the time with the people that you like. When you have a meeting, you sit next to the people that you work with and who are most like you. Just like you did in the 5th grade or in the 4th grade. You still do it today. And here's my point. Strength does not lie in similarity. Strength lies in difference. And that's why I'm a big proponent. I get calls all the time from students from Syracuse or students from other schools, and they're especially students of color. I'll get a call. I got a call the other day from a young Black woman I'm mentoring. And she's saying, well, I got an offer from Pocatello, Idaho. Right? And she's from Atlanta. And she's like, I don't even know where Pocatello, Idaho is. I said, I know, I understand. And everyone's telling me not to go. And I'm like, why? Well, because, I just won't fit in. And I'm like, what are you talking about? What do you mean you won't fit in? Well, you're not going to a sorority. You're going to be a journalist. And it's like me turning down, like, well, Ramon, do you want to go, when I was younger, do you want to go be a producer in Moscow? No, I don't think I'll fit in. Those Russians, What? And so this ability to embrace discomfort, not only embrace it, but to seek it out. We do it on vacation. The idea of diversity and inclusion is to do it every day and to seek those things out which are different and you know nothing about and educating yourself immensely. That's why you have to have on your team people who are different. And you got to get out of them the difference that's there. Because there's no point in knowing that they're different, but then you don't use it for anything. You don't value it. So you have to make them comfortable so that they can be their most authentic self, right? Everyone knows when I walk into a room that I'm Latino, that I'm gay, and that I'm from Arkansas, right? It's Arkansas that throws them. And all those things are important to who I am. And the reason I say it is because I want you to use those gifts. Use the gifts of me being from all those places. You can't use those gifts if you don't create an environment in which everyone is valued, even if they're not necessarily your cup of tea. You should value their presence in the newsroom. If you don't like gun owners and you think that guns should be banned, okay, great. Save that for the ballot box. Save that for your own political conversations in the kitchen. But value the fact that if you want to have a good conversation and a good story that's done around issues around guns, you need gun owners as well as people who are opponents of guns in the conversation, and you need to value their presence and not only value it, but seek it out and appreciate it and celebrate it. That's what I think diversity is. And I think that's a counterintuitive thought. It's not just about, me and Hub and people who are people of color. Everyone has to be involved. Everyone has diversity in their life in some way. And that's my thought.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear you. One of the things that I have said in newsrooms in the past is that oftentimes it seems to be about the person of color going into the neighborhood of color to cover the story that has to do with the people of color in that neighborhood. And I've gone to news directors and I said, I shouldn't be the only one who goes to that neighborhood, goes to that area of town to listen to those people. In fact, all the rest of y'all should be doing that.
Yeah.
Everyone should be doing those things. And
you've got to be proud of who you are, where you're from, no matter what. Absolutely. Even if it meant hardship, even if it meant you were the child of a single mother, even if it meant that, there was crime in your family or someone's locked up. Be proud of who you are and what made you who you are. And celebrate that in your newsrooms, and don't let anybody knock you off that pedestal. When I was in college, I had a professor tell me that I shouldn't be talking about diversity that much. And yet another professor told me, don't listen to that person, be who you are. Thank God that professor stepped in. But as you can tell, my parents instilled a lot of confidence in me, and I wasn't shaken by that. But you guys can't be shaken by that. Everyone listening in here, you are such a gift. Bring that gift to the table. And engage it and participate and get involved, because the way we're going to combat this is more and more of us who are going to take leadership roles are going to make sure that we don't have tokens in the newsroom, just one, that we don't have, that we have safe places, that we allow people to be authentic. That's what's going to change this. And I have great hope. The great hope I have, Hub, and I think you probably have it too, because you get a chance to see it. Being a professor at FIU brings me great hope, because 75% of the students at FIU are all Latino, and most of them are immigrants from Venezuela, Colombia, Cuba, and they come from oppressed places and they're poor. And I see the magic in their eyes. I see the passion in the spirit, given the fact where they've come from, poor and not having much. And they have such hope and vision. And I think that is what's going to help us. And I'm really excited, because this issue around diversity, this issue around changing the newsroom, that's all going to happen. And it's happening already, because everyone in this call, all these students, they're going to take over. And we know that the generation that's coming up really understands this. And the generation that's in power now, well, guess what? They're not going to be in power much longer. And that's the transformation we're seeing. And that is the renaissance. That is the transformation. And I'm glad to be a part of it. But the world is changing. So
yeah,
it's going to be a fascinating couple of decades.
Yeah, absolutely. Full disclosure, some years ago, I was on an accreditation visit to Florida International, got to meet a lot of those students. First generation students who are coming from backgrounds where they didn't have a whole lot of money, but they had a lot of aspiration, and the energy was amazing. Yeah. And you're lucky to be in there. We're all lucky to be a part of these kinds of enterprises where those sorts of things are possible.
And Hub, the one last thing I would say to all the students, especially those that go on to be leaders and managers, stop looking for people who you like and who look like you or sound like you or had the same experience. By the way, I love Syracuse grads. We have so many, but you can't just hire everyone from Syracuse. You just can't hire everyone from a certain region. And you just can't hire everyone who you think fits the mold. And one of the things I'm crusading against in all of the industry is all these leaders out there, many of them white, who think that there's a certain mold of professionalism, or you'll hear these words, polish, articulate, sophisticated. These are all code words. And what it does is we're leaving people behind who we should not be leaving behind. And by the way, just on that same issue, if you want to wear your hair naturally, damn it, wear your hair naturally. Okay, if you want to be who you are, be who you are. Don't let this industry change you. And if you have a problem with that, you call me, because I'll get on the phone with anyone at any network. I'll get on the phone with them. So be who you are. Don't let the industry try to shape you into some sort of robot. And if you have an accent, that's fine. Talk to me about it. I can help you through how to have that confidence. Accents, I think more and more people are understanding them. We have a young woman at CNN who has a thick accent. She's Latina. She's from the border. She's one of our best reporters and our best writers. But you should see the reaction at the beginning when she started among certain people who were like, and then they saw her writing and they're like, holy smokes. But we have an unconscious bias that creates this first perception of, right? Or people speak English a certain way, right? Latinos from Miami speak English a certain way. Right? There are certain things that happen in our communities and the way we pronounce words that when they get into the corporate world, sometimes corporate people say, I'm on a crusade to get people to understand. Don't shove that away. Bring it in. Bring it in.
Absolutely. I'm going to get to a couple of questions here. Again, encourage questions, and a few will come in. So here's one. What advice do you have for students in an ever-growing competitive market for internships at large broadcast organizations like CNN? With practically all those internships being remote, that's kind of allowed students from all over the place to apply to those positions. But how do you stand out and unique when applying to those sort of remote internships, such as those at CNN?
Yeah, you have to, what makes people stand out is you being your original self. Think about what is it about you that's interesting, and a lot of times it may be counterintuitive. It doesn't always have to be cookie cutter, right? I interned at Channel 6 last summer. I read CNN and I read the New York Times. Great. There's more to you than that. Think about something that's and put that in there. If there's a project at school that you're proud of, talk about that project, put it in there in some form, right? You know, you did a study on climate change and it was part of the school and you did it with the laboratory, you know, highlight that. Try to put something in there that's of distinction. Stop thinking that we're looking for some perfect candidate with the right credentials, right? They had to, you know, they went to Harvard and they studied in France at the Sorbonne and blah, blah, blah. No, give me something interesting. I'm not suggesting you put this, but one person many years ago had on there that they were, you know, they were championship baton twirler and they had been a competitive baton twirler for like 12 years. Okay. I'm like, okay, I'm all over this. I want to understand this. I want to know this. I'm fascinated by this world. You spend 12 years training on anything, I'd like to know. And it was a fascinating conversation and she stood out to me, right? That's just maybe a bizarre example, but you know, think about the things that you care a lot about. Find projects. You should be doing projects at school that you can showcase. And then relationships. Go get internships at smaller places. I know everyone wants to do an internship at CNN or other big, go do internships at smaller places. You will meet people who know people at other places, right? So constantly work out relationships and always remember, anytime you interact with someone in the profession or in the industry, it's always an interview already. The minute you interact with someone, the minute you send them an email, that's an interview, okay? We're going to immediately judge you based on what's in the email and whether you made a mistake and whether you're responsive, you know, so really be on top of that.
That's great advice. Thank you. Another question, what opportunities exist for, and you answered this a little bit, people who come from the print world, who are doing some print or online media, what kinds of opportunities exist at places like CNN now? Are those growing? And is digital the only option in that situation? What kinds of?
No, not at all. This has actually exploded. And this is an interesting question. When I started 9 years ago, the CNN we're at now and the CNN we're at today are completely night and day. About 5-6 years ago, I started hiring a lot of reporters from the world of print and digital. And I'll just give you an indication. In the last 10 days, I've hired 6 print reporters for jobs at CNN as a reporter. And they will get on TV, but they're not doing TV every day. Their job, and this is what I need to get you guys to understand. The job is journalism. The job is not platform, because the platforms keep changing, right? It's journalism. And so these reporters, we've hired a lot from print. Why? Because we're hiring beat reporters. So I'm hiring a reporter who is an expert on the House Democrats. I'm hiring a reporter who is an expert on Republican senators. I'm hiring a reporter who is an expert on Trump world in post-Trump. I'm hiring an expert on national security, but with a focus on intelligence. Where I have another reporter I'm hiring on national security who's only focused on FBI and domestic, right? And so that's the point that at our company we're getting to. We're much more like a newspaper these days, and newspapers are trying to be much more like us. But we are really focused. So I think it's a great question. I'm a big fan of beats, okay? Mm-hmm. If you can become an expert on something as a reporter, go for it. You know, I tell people all the time, especially TV people, stop doing morning shows, okay? Just stop. They're fine, they're great, but no reporter, I know of no morning reporter where I'm like, wow. You know, it's like they're a morning reporter. They're doing accidents and following last night's shooting. They're not digging, they're never enterprising, they're never talking, so go do a beat somewhere. If you have the opportunity to be a beat reporter in Sarasota or some sort of not that great job in Detroit or New York, take the beat reporter in Sarasota job. If you have the chance to be the State House TV reporter in Albany or a general assignment reporter in Cleveland, take the State House reporter. It might mean less money. It might mean smaller market, but you're going to be a much better journalist and a much more attractive to me than that GA reporters are a dime a dozen, right? Oh, so you can stand up and do a live shot. And you did that same live shot in Chattanooga, in Cleveland, Detroit, and Miami. Where's the enterprise reporting? Where's the beat reporting? I'm hiring beat reporters left and right. I hired a beat reporter who covered housing in Seattle. I love that beat. That's a huge beat in Seattle. If you've been to Seattle, you know how big problem the housing issue is. Point is if you know how to, if you learn enterprise beat muscles, how to source, those muscles can be applied to almost any other beat. If you're just doing GA work all day, well, okay.
Yeah.
Get it?
Absolutely. That there was another question about resume reels, and I think one of the things you're saying there is it's just not it's not so much about those particular, I can do this, I can do that, but it's about the content of the reporting that's going to be in that resume reel.
Yeah. Now, Hub, I can't speak for other networks. I've worked at other networks, and I probably could speak for other networks, but I'm not going to do that here. I'll speak for mine. And our focus is that journalism piece. And if you've noticed our hiring, okay, so Abby Phillip, we hired from the Washington Post. She's a great writer and a great reporter, okay? Last week, we announced that she's becoming an anchor. She didn't know anything about television when we hired her, not squat, okay? So we taught her television. My job, my team also does all the internal training and coaching of our anchors. And we gave her an intensive couple of years because we saw the ability. So that's the world that I live in now, but we care about journalism. We're hiring people left and right who don't know anything about TV. We can teach you TV. We're not going to teach you critical thinking. We're not going to teach you enterprise. We're not going to teach you how to source. That's what we value. That's what we covet. The other we can teach. And if you stand out on those, you have a better shot at a place at our place. Now, look, there are other places, they want TV jockeys. They want people that can, turn around and say, good morning. Oh, wait, I wasn't going to talk about a network. Sorry. Happy morning, United States. There are other places who they need something else. That's fine too, but we don't do that here.
Yeah.
We're not cooking. We're not doing. You'll never see a barbecue in the morning show here at CNN ever.
Fair enough.
No one's going to be making burgers.
Nobody's going to be making burgers. So
yeah.
Get your cooking advice someplace else.
Yeah.
But another question, we've been talking a little bit about diversity of all different kinds. And the question is, what's the consideration for mothers who are coming back into the workforce after jumping off maybe to take a little bit of time raising families, that sort of thing? What experiences are resonant there that can help them to sort of become and remain competitive as they go back into the workforce?
Yeah, this is such a great question and such an important one. I have strong personal feelings about this. I'm a gay man who is single, divorced. So one might think, what the hell does he know about this? But I care a lot about it because of the work I do. First of all, I think there might be, I hope, some silver lining to this horrific pandemic might be that the workforce has transformed to understand that flexibility is something that actually works, that people can be in this business and have, and raise children and have families and lives. I mean, that's always been the case, but it's been a difficult business. And it's one of the things that's the other crusade I have. So to a single mother, I would say, and to a wife or mothering, any of those issues that are coming in, I think there's an opportunity. And I think you should look for organizations that really value that value you. Because look, there are some organizations where this is a difficult issue, where family life and having children, you got to interview the people that you work with. You got to look at the people they hire. You got to talk to the people that work there and find out, what is it like for someone, who has a certain family situation? And I don't think that all places are created equal on this. I wish they were, and I hope we're moving in that direction. But I would first have you seek out, look for the places that give value to what you're asking. And to me, it's like, you want someone who, the diversity piece of having a mom, the diversity piece of having someone who has lots of children, the diversity piece of having a single parent. And I think you want to find places that value that and know how to work with all types of family situations and family forms. I wish I could say that every company's that way. I don't think they are, but do your research. And then within companies, there are certain leaders who are that way. I will tell you my philosophy in life and the way I run my department. I run my department very, very liberally in the sense that I don't care when people arrive or when they leave. I don't care about their vacation time. They can take it. They don't even, they just need to give me a heads up, but I'm not checking their vacation time. If they need to leave and go to the PTA meeting or the play or the baseball game, I push them out. I said, you know, I don't want a child not looking up and finding their parent at the PTA meeting or the play or the ballet or the recital because they had to work for me. No, that's not happening. So I think you need to search out organizations that share that ethic and share that feeling. At the end of the day, no one's going to remember the stuff that you left, but they are going to remember that you weren't at the very important life moment. And when you don't live to work, right? I mean, you really, it's about your life and being happy. So if there's any way I can help you guys with that, by all means, reach out. It's a passionate, I care a lot about this issue. I think we're leaving a lot of people on the table or behind who should be in our newsrooms simply because there's some notion that they have to work certain time period, a certain way. They have to be a certain category. Journalism should not be the kingdom of the young, unmarried, childless person. Imagine what a horrible place it would be if all we had were young people who weren't married and didn't have any children. I mean, that's like some sort of Netflix horror show, right? With all due respect to you unmarried young single people, but
sorry, folks.
I love them, but you just can't have a world filled with them, right? You're going to learn in life that life is wonderful when you start getting attachments and family. I mean, those are the things that make life worth living for, and it's not about the newsroom.
And you start to ask different questions too. Absolutely.
I hope that answers that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Another question, and we're coming down to it. So this might be the wind up real quickly. A number of different questions have asked about truth and what's the role of CNN in declaring something disinformation and something that might be just a plain lie that's being pushed out there, maybe even by other sources out there. What are your thoughts?
Trying to understand the question. So
just basically the notion that does CNN have a role or organizations like CNN in calling out the disinformation that happens, calling a lie when someone is actually saying that on the air, or do you step away from that?
No, look, I think this has been one of the more important conversations that we've had as journalists in this era, in the era that we're living in. This administration challenged journalists in many ways, in both good and bad ways. And I think we have to be thoughtful about this. It's important to hold people accountable and to say, and to really push people to understand this is factual and this is not factual. And I think you think about the word lie. I mean, the word lie can be said in a way that's different, has a different meaning depending on how you say it. And so I think if something is a lie, it might imply some sort of motivation behind being misled, because there's something that can be not factual, but the person may have made a mistake. And then there's purposeful misleading. So this is complicated. And I think in every case, you need to have a conversation about it. You need to understand what's the landscape, what's the context, is there a motivation involved? And I think all of that is fair game as part of the analysis to determine whether that's a lie or whether that was a mistake or an omission. And I think if something is a lie, it is okay to call it a lie, but you need to be understanding the context in which you're saying it and how that might be perceived and read into in the polarized world. So I think it's complicated. And I think you have to have that conversation every time. Have we gotten it right every time? No. But I think we have to effort to make sure it is right every time, because every time we don't get it right, it chips away at any credibility that we might have. And right now, luckily, we have a lot of credibility. And those three little letters, these three little letters on my shoulder, the reason they're so valuable is because all the research we do tells us that it is the most trusted name in news in the world. And think about that. It is the most trusted name in news in the entire world. And how you, every day must be an effort to keep that.
Yes. I think that's a great place to wrap us up. Ramon Escobar, thank you, sir, so much for this conversation. This has been fabulous.
Well, thank you, Hub. I did want to say just real quick, congratulations again to you. I look forward to seeing you when you come down to the state of Florida, if I'm still here. And I do want to thank my friend, Mark Lodato. Mark and I we went to school together. We were college buddies. He, I think, was 1 year older than me, even though I come across as a lot more mature. And he was a kid from California who got in his car and traveled, not knowing a soul in Missouri. And I was coming up from Arkansas and didn't know anybody in Missouri as well, because all my friends went to Fayetteville. Anyway, he's a good friend of mine. I'm so happy that he's the dean. He is a great journalist and a wonderful person, and you couldn't be in better hands at Syracuse. And I will do anything for Mark, and will always be here for Syracuse Orangemen, no matter what they need or any job they have. And I would just point out that, that Mark had a difficult time in his early years at Missouri. He didn't get great grades, meanwhile I was rocking the grades, man. I was rocking them. But he didn't turn out too bad, Hub. He didn't turn out too bad.
He's done pretty well for himself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. He drove you away, but other than that.
Oh, thank you so much, Ramon.
So my love to the Syracuse students. I'll be there whenever you ask, and as soon as this thing is over, I definitely want to come up. I'm expecting to go to an Orangeman game, and Lodato to invite me. And thank you, Mark. I love you.
All right. Thank you so much. And thank you all for joining us in this conversation. There will be more coming. And please stay tuned. Please look out for those announcements. We'll have more, and we'll see you here again. So thank you again for being here. Thank you again, Ramon. Take care, everyone.
Okay, Dean Hub. See you soon, buddy.